I never expected to find love at 73, let alone in a retirement community in Burlington, Vermont. But when Sterling moved into the cottage next to mine, everything I thought I knew about endings changed. He taught me that some of the best chapters are written last, and that courage doesn't fade with age. If this story moves you, please like and subscribe. Your support helps us share more stories that matter. The day Sterling arrived, I was on my knees in the garden, pulling weeds from around the tomato plants I'd started too optimistically in May. My back ached. My knees complained, and I was seriously questioning why I'd bothered planting a garden at all when the community dining hall served perfectly adequate vegetables. Then, I heard the moving truck rumble up the gravel, drive next door. I sat back on my heels and watched as a tall man with silver hair stepped out of a sedan behind the truck. He moved with the kind of careful deliberation that comes from a body that's been through things. But there was grace there, too. He wore khaki pants and a blue button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, and when he turned to survey the cottage, I caught sight of his profile. Something in my chest shifted. I stood up, brushed the dirt from my knees, and told myself I was being ridiculous. I'd lived in Greenbrier Commons for 2 years now, ever since selling the house in Montpelier after Frank died. I'd settled into a comfortable routine of morning walks, afternoon reading, and weekly phone calls with my daughter in Seattle. I didn't need complications, but when Sterling glanced over and our eyes met across the hedge of lilacs between our properties, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Maybe ever. He raised a hand in greeting. "Hello there." "Welcome to the neighborhood," I called back, my voice sounding steadier than I felt. "I'm Howard Sterling." He walked over to the hedge, and up close I could see his eyes were hazel, flecked with gold. "Just moving in today. This place is beautiful." "It's quiet," I said. "Peaceful. Good people." We talked for a few minutes about nothing important, just the kind of small talk neighbors make. He was from Rutland originally, had lived in Boston for 40 years working as a maritime insurance adjuster, and decided to return to Vermont for retirement. His voice had a pleasant timbre, and he had a way of listening that made you feel heard. After the movers left, I went inside and made dinner, the same simple pasta I made every Tuesday. But I kept glancing out the kitchen window at the lights coming on in Sterling's cottage, wondering about him. That night, lying in bed, I thought about Frank. We'd been married for 38 years. He'd been a good husband, a good father to Rachel. We'd built a life together that looked right from the outside. And I'd loved him in the way you love someone you've chosen to share your days with. But there had always been something missing, something I'd spent most of my life not naming. The next morning, I found Sterling on the shared pathway between our cottages, looking puzzled at a tangle of garden hose. "Previous tenant left this," he said. "I can't tell if it's one hose or 3. I laughed and helped him sort it out. We ended up having coffee on his porch, talking about the community, about Vermont, about the ways life surprises you. He mentioned a daughter in Philadelphia, grandchildren he didn't see often enough. He didn't mention a wife, and I noticed he wore no ring. Neither did I anymore. I'd taken mine off a year after Frank's funeral, and Rachel had said nothing about it when she noticed. Over the following weeks, Sterling and I fell into an easy friendship. We walked together in the mornings along the trails that wound through the community's wooded acres. We played chess in the common room on rainy afternoons. We discovered a shared love of old mystery novels and started trading paperbacks back and forth. The other residents noticed, of course. Greenbrier Commons wasn't large, maybe 60 cottages total, and people paid attention. But Vermont has a particular kind of discretion, a live and let live quality, and mostly people just smiled and nodded when they saw us together. It was Dorothy from the cottage across the way who finally said something directly. She cornered me at the community garden one afternoon in late June, her eyes bright with curiosity. "That Sterling is a nice man," she said. "He is," I agreed. "Focusing on my tomato plants. Widower, I heard." I looked up at her. "Is he?" "Lost his partner 5 years ago. Cancer. Very sad." She paused. "His partner's name was James." The earth seemed to tilt slightly. I stared at Dorothy, and she looked back at me with surprising gentleness. "I just thought you should know," she said, "in case it matters." After she left, I sat down on the garden bench, my hands shaking. Sterling had lost his partner. His male partner. He'd lived a life I'd only imagined in the darkest, most secret hours of my own existence. That evening, Sterling knocked on my door with a bottle of wine and 2 borrowed glasses from the community kitchen. "Thought we could watch the sunset," he said. "It's supposed to be a good one." We sat on my porch as the sky turned gold and pink over the green mountains. We talked about our daughters, about retirement, about the strange feeling of having more years behind us than ahead. Then Sterling said, quiet and careful, "Dorothy mentioned she talked to you today." My heart hammered. "She did?" "I imagine she told you about James." "Yes." Sterling was silent for a long moment. I lived a very different life in Boston than the one I had growing up here. Vermont in the 50s and 60s wasn't kind to people like me. Like us, I should say. Boston gave me room to breathe. James and I had 42 years together. I couldn't speak. The word us hung in the air between us. "I don't mean to presume," Sterling continued, and now I could hear the tremor in his voice. "But Howard, I've been around long enough to recognize certain things. The way you look at me sometimes, the way you don't talk about your marriage the way the other widowers here do. I could be completely wrong, and if I am, I apologize." "You're not wrong," I whispered. The relief in Sterling's face was so profound, it made my chest ache. "I was never brave enough," I said. "I grew up in a small town in New Hampshire. My father would have disowned me, so I did what was expected. I married Frank and I tried to be happy, and mostly I was. But it was never quite right." Sterling finished softly. "Never quite right," I agreed. We sat there as the sunset faded and the first stars appeared. Sterling reached over and took my hand, and I let him. His palm was warm and calloused, and the simple touch felt like coming home to a place I'd never been. But as the night deepened, doubt crept in. I thought about Rachel, about what she would think. I thought about Frank's memory, about the life we'd built. I thought about being 73 years old and only now admitting the truth. "I don't know if I can do this," I said. Sterling squeezed my hand gently. "There's no rush, Howard. We have time." Time moved differently after that night. The days had a new quality, heightened and strange. Sterling and I continued our routines, but everything felt charged with possibility and fear in equal measure. I called Rachel on a Sunday morning in early July. She was busy with her sons, their voices loud and happy in the background, and we talked about nothing important for a while. Then, gathering my courage, I said, "I've made a good friend here. His name is Sterling." "That's great, Dad," Rachel said warmly. "You sounded lonely the last few times we talked." "I'm glad you have company." I wanted to tell her more, but the words stuck in my throat. After we hung up, I sat with the phone in my lap, feeling like a coward. Sterling found me that afternoon. sitting alone by the community pond. "You look troubled," he said, settling onto the bench beside me. I told him about the call with Rachel, about my inability to speak the truth. "I've been hiding my whole life," I said. "You'd think I'd be better at it by now," Sterling smiled sadly. "Or maybe you're just tired of hiding." "When did you tell your daughter?" I asked. "Claire was 12 when she figured it out herself," Sterling said. "She came home from school one day and asked point blank if James was my boyfriend. I said yes, and she said okay, and asked what was for dinner." He laughed softly. It wasn't always that simple. She had questions later, especially as a teenager, but we talked through it. She loved James. She grieved him almost as much as I did. "I wasted so much time," I said. "You survived," Sterling corrected gently. "That's not nothing, Howard. You did what you had to do." Over the next few weeks, Sterling and I grew closer in ways that felt both natural and terrifying. We had dinner together most evenings, trading off cooking duties between our two cottages. We discovered Sterling could actually cook while I was hopeless at anything beyond pasta and sandwiches. So he started teaching me basic techniques. One evening in late July, standing in his kitchen while he showed me how to properly sauté garlic, our hands brushed and we both froze. Sterling looked at me and the question in his eyes was clear. I kissed him. It was my first kiss with a man, at 73 years old, and it felt like every cliché and nothing like them at the same time. It felt right. It felt like myself. Afterward, we stood there, foreheads touching, and Sterling said, "Okay?" "More than okay," I managed. We took things slowly, both of us aware of our ages, our histories, the weight of the lives we'd lived. But there was joy in it, too, a kind of giddy happiness I associated with being young, not old. The community noticed the change in us, of course. Some people smiled knowingly. Others grew slightly distant, their politeness taking on a cooler edge. One couple who'd been friendly before stopped sitting with us at community events. It hurt, but less than I expected. Sterling had lived through worse, and his steadiness helped me find my own. "People will think what they think," he said. "We're not hurting anyone. We're just living." But I still hadn't told Rachel. In mid-August, Sterling suggested we take a trip. "There's a bed and breakfast in Stowe I've been wanting to visit," he said. "2 rooms if you prefer, or 1. No pressure." We booked 1 room. The drive up through the mountains was beautiful, late summer turning the valleys golden. We talked about everything and nothing, and I felt lighter than I had in years. The bed and breakfast was a converted farmhouse with a view of Mount Mansfield. The owner, a woman in her 60s, checked us in without comment, and when she showed us to our room, she pointed out features with the same professionalism she'd probably use for any couple. That night, lying next to Sterling in the dark, I said, "I keep waiting for it to feel wrong, but it doesn't." "Why would it feel wrong?" Sterling asked. "Because I spent 70 years telling myself it would." He turned to face me. "Howard, you're allowed to be happy. Even now. Especially now." We stayed in Stowe for 3 days, hiking easy trails, eating good food, existing in a bubble where we were simply 2 people in love. Because that's what it was, I realized. Love. Different from what I'd felt for Frank, but no less real. On the drive back to Burlington, Sterling said, "I know you're worried about Rachel, but she loves you. Give her the chance to understand." That night, I called my daughter. "Rachel," I said, "I need to tell you something about Sterling." There was a pause. Then she said, "Dad, I kinda wondered. The way you talk about him." My throat tightened. And I want you to be happy." Her voice was gentle. You always seemed sad when I was growing up. I thought it was just how you were. But maybe it was something else. I loved your mother, I said quickly. I know you did. But Dad, it's okay. Whatever this is, whoever Sterling is to you, it's okay. I cried then, quietly, while Rachel waited on the other end of the line. When I could speak again, I told her everything. About realizing the truth about myself. About being too afraid to live it. About meeting Sterling and feeling like my life was finally beginning. I'm 73, I said. This probably seems ridiculous. It seems brave, Rachel said. I'm proud of you. After we hung up, I walked next door to Sterling's cottage. He took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. She knows, I said into his shoulder, and she's okay with it. Sterling held me tighter. Of course she is. She loves you. But even as happiness flooded through me, I felt the ghost of Frank in the room. The weight of the life I'd lived, the choices I'd made. I thought about the wedding photos still boxed up in my closet, the years of pretending, the genuine moments of affection mixed with the underlying wrongness. Do you ever feel guilty? I asked Sterling. About being happy now? He pulled back to look at me. After James died, I thought I'd never feel anything again. The grief was enormous, but he told me near the end that he wanted me to keep living, really living. So no, I don't feel guilty. I feel grateful. Frank never knew, I said. I never told him. That was survival, Howard. Not deception. You did what you needed to do. I wanted to believe him. But the knot in my chest remained. September came, and with it the first hints of fall. The maples around Greenbrier Commons began to turn, splashes of red and gold against the green. Sterling and I settled into a rhythm that felt like partnership. We were open now about our relationship, holding hands when we walked, sitting close at community gatherings. Some people adjusted, some didn't. But increasingly, I found I didn't care. Claire, Sterling's daughter, came to visit over Labor Day weekend. She was a warm, forthright woman in her 50s who hugged me like family and asked intelligent questions about my life. Over dinner at Sterling's cottage, she told stories about her childhood with Sterling and James, painting a picture of a loving, ordinary family. Dad was always just Dad, she said. It didn't matter that he was gay. What mattered was that he showed up, that he loved us, that he made terrible jokes at breakfast. Sterling groaned. They weren't that bad. They were truly awful, Claire said, grinning at me. You'll see. The easy acceptance, the normalcy of it all made something settle in my chest. This could have been my life, I thought. If I'd been braver, if the world had been different. But dwelling on what might have been seemed pointless now. I had this moment, this reality, and it was good. In late September, the community organized a harvest dinner, a tradition I'd attended the previous 2 years. This time, Sterling and I went together, openly as a couple. We sat with Dorothy and a few others at a long table decorated with pumpkins and fall flowers. The food was potluck style, everyone contributing dishes. Sterling had made a beautiful apple tart that drew compliments all evening. During dessert, Dorothy raised her glass. To new beginnings, she said, looking directly at Sterling and me. No matter when they come. Others joined the toast, and I felt a swell of gratitude for this community that had mostly chosen kindness. But not everyone was pleased. Later that evening, a man named Hugh approached me near the coffee station. He was my age, a retired banker who'd always been cordial but distant. I don't understand what you're doing, he said quietly. You had a wife, a normal life. I felt Sterling tense beside me, but I put a hand on his arm. I had a life, I said to Hugh. It was the life I could manage at the time. This is the life I choose now. It's not natural, Hugh said. It's perfectly natural, I replied, surprised by my own calm. For me, it's the most natural thing I've ever done. Hugh shook his head and walked away. Sterling let out a breath. You handled that well, he said. I'm tired of apologizing for existing, I said. That night, unable to sleep, I got up and dug through my closet until I found the box of wedding photos. I sat on the floor and looked through them. These images of a younger me in a suit, standing beside Frank in his dress, both of us smiling. I had loved him in my way. We'd raised Rachel together, built a home, shared decades of small intimacies and comfortable routines. The marriage had been real, even if it was built on an incomplete truth. But I'd also lived in a kind of prison, one I'd constructed myself out of fear and shame and the weight of expectations. Sterling found me there in the morning, still on the floor surrounded by photographs. I was thinking about Frank, I said, about whether I wronged him. Sterling sat down beside me, picking up one of the photos. Did you treat him with respect? Yes. Did you care for him when he was sick? Of course. Did you honor your commitments to him and your family? I tried to, I said. Then you did the best you could with what you knew and who you were able to be. Sterling set the photo down gently. Howard, you can't change the past. You can only choose what to do now. I looked at the man beside me, this gift I'd never expected, and made my choice. I want to live with you, I said, officially. Combine our households, whatever that looks like here. Sterling's face lit up. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. We talked to the community management the following week. Greenbrier Commons allowed couples to live together in the larger cottages, and after some paperwork and a modest fee, we began the process of combining our homes. I chose Sterling's cottage, which was slightly bigger and had better light. Over the next few weeks, we merged our belongings, a surprisingly intimate process of deciding which furniture to keep, whose dishes to use, how to organize a shared closet. Rachel came to visit in October to help with the move. She brought her sons, my grandsons, who were 14 and 16, and took the whole thing with teenage nonchalance. So you and Sterling are like married now? The younger one asked. Something like that, I said. Cool. Can we go see the lake? Rachel laughed. Not quite the reaction you expected? I don't know what I expected, I admitted. She hugged me. They love you, Dad. This doesn't change that. Nothing changes that. The official move happened on a crisp October day, leaves crunching underfoot, the air smelling of wood smoke. Dorothy organized a welcome party, and half the community showed up with casseroles and congratulations. That night, exhausted and happy, Sterling and I sat on our porch watching the stars emerge. I keep thinking about all the years I wasted, I said. You didn't waste them, Sterling said. You lived them. They brought you here. Still, if I'd known sooner, been braver sooner. Howard. Sterling took my hand. Listen to me. You came out at 73? Do you know how extraordinary that is? Most people who live closeted their whole lives never find the courage. You did. You chose truth and love and yourself, even when it was terrifying. That's not wasted time. That's triumph. I let his words sink in, feeling their truth. Besides, Sterling continued, I needed those years too. I needed to live with James, to love him, to lose him and grieve him. That's what prepared me to meet you. We both needed our paths to get here. So you don't think we're too old for this? Sterling laughed. Too old for love? For happiness? For building a life together, however much time we have? Howard, we're exactly the right age. We know what matters now. We don't have time to waste on things that don't. A meteor streaked across the sky, bright and brief. "Make a wish," Sterling said. But I didn't need to. Everything I wanted was already here. Over the following months, we settled into our shared life. We established routines, navigated small conflicts about thermostat settings and kitchen organization, learned each other's rhythms and needs. Sterling snored softly. I woke too early. He liked order. I was comfortable with clutter. We figured it out. In November, we hosted Thanksgiving. Rachel and her family traveling from Seattle, Claire and her husband coming up from Philadelphia. The cottage was crowded and loud and full of laughter, grandchildren running around. Two families blending into something new. Watching Sterling carve the turkey while Claire told an embarrassing story about his attempt to fix a roof in 1987, I felt a profound sense of rightness. This was family. This was home. Later, after everyone had gone to bed, Rachel found me in the kitchen finishing the dishes. "You seem different, Dad," she said. "Lighter." "I feel different," I admitted. "Like I'm finally myself." "I'm glad." She dried a plate thoughtfully. "I used to worry about you even when Mom was alive. You always seemed like you were somewhere else." "I was," I said. "But I'm here now." Winter came to Vermont with its usual force, snow piling high around the cottage, the world turning white and quiet. Sterling and I spent cozy evenings by the fire, reading or talking or simply sitting in companionable silence. One night in January, during a particularly fierce snowstorm, the power went out. We lit candles and bundled under blankets on the couch, watching the snow fall in thick curtains past the window. "Tell me something I don't know about you," Sterling said. I thought about it. When I was 17, there was a boy in my class, Thomas. We were friends, or I thought we were. One day he told me he was like me, that he understood. He tried to kiss me. What happened? I pushed him away. Called him names. I was so scared someone would think I was like him that they'd know. The memory still stung. He left town after graduation. I never saw him again, never apologized. Sterling was quiet for a moment. "We all have regrets, Howard. People we hurt because we were hurting. All you can do is try to be different now." I wish I could tell him I'm sorry. Maybe he knows anyway. Maybe he figured it out, same as you did. I leaned against Sterling's shoulder. "Thank you." "For what?" "For being patient with me. For understanding. Howard, you're not a project. You're the person I love. Patience doesn't enter into it." The storm passed by morning, leaving the world transformed. We bundled up and walked through the fresh snow, our breath pluming white. The sun dazzling on the pristine drifts. At the community pond, frozen solid now, we found children from the family housing section skating on the ice. They called to us waving and we waved back. "Think we're too old to skate?" I asked. "Absolutely," Sterling said. "But we could try anyway." We didn't, in the end. But the fact that we considered it felt significant. Spring came eventually, as it always does. The snow receded, the ground thawed, and I planted my garden again, this time with Sterling's help. We planned it together, choosing vegetables we both liked, flowers that would bloom in succession through the summer. On a warm day in April, Sterling and I took a drive to Montpelier. I showed him the house where I'd lived with Frank and Rachel, now occupied by a young family with a trampoline in the yard. "Rachel learned to ride her bike on that sidewalk," I said, pointing. "Frank taught her while I watched from the porch." "Do you miss it?" Sterling asked. "I miss parts of it," I said honestly, "but I don't want it back." We drove out to the cemetery where Frank was buried. I'd visited a few times since moving to Burlington, but not recently. The grave was tidy, the headstone weathered. Sterling waited in the car while I stood there trying to find words. "I'm sorry I couldn't be who you needed," I finally said. "But I think I was the best I could be. I hope that was enough." The wind rustled through the trees carrying no answers, and I realized I didn't need any. Frank was gone, and I was here, and life was for the living. Back at Greenbrier Commons, Dorothy was working in the community garden. She straightened when she saw us, smiling. "Good trip?" "Very good," I said. She looked at Sterling and me, standing close, my hand resting casually on his back. "You two give me hope," she said, "that it's never really over until it's over. That there's always time for one more chapter." "More than one, I hope," Sterling said. Dorothy laughed. "From your mouth to God's ear." That evening, Sterling and I sat on our porch as we did most nights now, watching the sun set over the mountains. I thought about the long, winding path that had brought me here, all the years of hiding and fear, the slow accumulation of courage. "I used to think my life was over when Frank died," I said, "that I'd just exist until the end, going through the motions. And now," Sterling asked. "Now I think maybe it's just beginning." Sterling reached for my hand and I took it. No hesitation, no fear. Just two men, loving each other in the twilight of their lives, proving that it's never too late to become yourself. The stars came out one by one, and we sat there together, exactly where we were meant to be.